What's good, family? Smash the like button and subscribe. Oh man, this is bad. Boxing is down super bad right now. Your man's Caleb Plant going out super sad, no doubt. Now, I'm sure you might have heard by now. If not, you've certainly seen by my title, and you're about to hear right now. Caleb Plant versus Canelo Alvarez is officially off. Like I said, I'm a few days late on this, but I just couldn't let it rest. Not after my last video. Now, in my last video on this topic, you'll know that we covered the extremely suspect life story from. Yeah, we covered the life story memoir from Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant wrote a memoir on his negotiations with Canelo Alvarez. But in the memoir, in his life story, in his novel, in the novel he wrote on the negotiations, he didn't actually say the fight's off. Do you understand? He didn't say the fight's off because of A, B, C, D. Instead, he proceeded to basically list all of the reasons, all of the little all of the points of tension. Oh man, we gave him $40 million and he's having a wedding and he hasn't got back to us and immediately and all this kind of stuff, whining. But he never actually said, yo, the fight's off because Canelo did this. Didn't do that. He said, we gave him 40 million, we gave him a rematch clause. Caleb Plant listed all of the things that they gave to Canelo Alvarez. So, in that video, I concluded, well, Caleb, you've written this suspect memoir, but never once have you told us the ultimate problem, the bottom line problem, why this fight can't happen. So like I said, I concluded that, well, it just seems like the fight's inevitably going to happen because you've given Canelo Alvarez everything he wants. So surely, being the B-side that you are, being the B-side who's never sold 1 million pay-per-views, being the B-side who's never done a pay-per-view, being the B-side who's never beat a Hall of Famer, being the B-side who's never fought a Hall of Famer, being the B-side who's never had a big fight, being the B-side who's never made $10 million. You better sit down somewhere, thank your lucky stars that you've been given plenty of time to train, unlike other. Let's not forget, many people, included PBC fighters, they always throw around the, oh man, Canelo Alvarez, he cheat. He don't want to fight people. He don't want to give people notice. You ain't gonna do me dirty. That's what they say. For years, people have claimed that Alvarez wants weight clauses and he likes to catch his opponent slipping. All of a sudden, your lucky stars, the PBC get their lucky stars granted in as much as Alvarez was giving them plenty of time to prepare, and you moaning about having too much time to prepare with. Oh man, he had a wedding. He had this, he had that. Why aren't you training? Because in your memoir, in your negotiation memoir, in your negotiation novel, you never said, you didn't make no excuse. You said that you give him everything he wanted. You didn't tell no one why the fight couldn't happen, apart from he's busy at the moment and hasn't got back to us yet. And we know for a fact, like I said in that video, we know for a fact, Alvarez doesn't negotiate with people for the sake of it. Show me one time, you PBC Caleb Plant fans, show me one time Alvarez has entered negotiations and then has done something else. He doesn't do that. He doesn't waste time. He doesn't need to. He's the A-side. A-sides don't, innit? If Alvarez was scared of someone, he just wouldn't entertain it. A-sides don't enter negotiations if they've got no intention, do they? It doesn't make sense. A-sides, when they don't want, for example, Alvarez didn't want to fight Triple G a third time. He didn't see a point. Alvarez said, Triple G spot, you go and, if you want a third fight with me, go and start fighting some of the contenders. If you beat Andrade, if you beat Plant, or Charlo, or whoever, I'll reconsider it. Golovkin, he ain't been doing nothing. My point is, Alvarez didn't enter negotiations for a third fight. He didn't want the fight. So like I said, Alvarez has never entered negotiations for the sake of it. And the fact that he entered negotiations, and the fact that you've explained that you were really deep into them, because again, the fact that Plant's listed all of the factors they've given to Alvarez tells me that they were clearly deep into negotiations. And the way that Plant basically implies the contract was done. It was all sorted. He doesn't list where there was problems. Apart from the ultimate problem. The ultimate problem was he didn't want to fight. That's it. They exposed themselves, and I'm glad they did. I'm glad actually that Plant went out of his way to try and be smart and try and plant. Ultimately, yeah, Plant tried to plant the narrative. Before the fight fell through, he wanted to get his words out there first. And to many people, to all of the PBC shills, that was good enough. But obviously the YB, he 290 IQ. You can't fool the YB. I got your number. You goofy. You scary. I knew it was too good to be true. And to be honest, this fight ain't even all that big anyway. I can't even lie to you, man. I wouldn't have minded seeing it, but I'm not going to miss it. Don't care. Plant was easy work anyway. I'd rather see... Well, the only reason I'd want to see Plant fight is to watch Alvarez cut through him and see all you scary Plant fans go missing again. And talk about the next hype job. Because Plant ain't done nothing, not even a bit, to consider being an interesting fight. I've already told you, man. Plant needs to fight Benavidez to make it interesting. To make the winner of that fight interesting to Alvarez, in my opinion. But like I said, either way... This video needed to be done because I can't just let this subject rest. I called it. I said, listen. Because let's not forget, at the time Plant put his memoir out, yeah? He didn't make it clear the fight was off. It just sounded like there was potentially negotiations problems. And 2-2s within a day or two of that message coming out, it became apparent that negotiations were off. Which again shows us how PBC, Al Heyman and Plant are trying to be crafty. How are they trying to be crafty? Well, they weren't the ones to call it off. So they were doing it on purpose. Did you notice that? They didn't want to be the ones to say the fight's off. Why? Because they know it looks bad. If they come out and say the fight's off, it looks bad. But essentially, they did everything but. We're going to tell everyone why the fight ain't working out so great. Then when it falls through, we'll say, see, we told you so, we tried our best. All that message said from Plant was, oh, look how much we tried. He was begging it. Oh, please everyone feel sorry for me. We gave him everything. But in doing so, 190 IQ YB, you've exposed yourself. Because if you make a message putting out to the public about how you gave him everything, it begs the question, well, why isn't the fight on then? Oops. You didn't think of that angle, did you? You just thought all the dopey fans, which obviously have, all the dopey fans lap it up. Oh yeah, look. Because listen, we're used to people creating narratives. What are the standard narratives in boxing? Oh, we gave him everything he wants. We gave him, you know what I'm saying? All them, you know, them typical talking points. Them typical failed negotiation talking points. Oh, we gave him this, we gave him that, and he still didn't want to fight. You know what I'm saying? Typical stuff. This ran straight into the typical failed negotiations narrative box. Straight in there. See, we gave him everything, and he still didn't want to sign the fight. Sorry, that don't make no sense. And besides, to be honest with you, you're a B-side. You don't give anything. He gives to you, which is another point here. Why is Plant even talking, to be honest with you? You are a B-side, and I've always said this. In my opinion, yeah, until you're the A-side, you shut up and grab your ankles. Look at everyone who fights Alvarez. Callum Smith, 5 weeks notice. Whatever else, yeah? The point is, that's what you do when you're a B-side. And not being funny, but Alvarez actually gave Plant the best opportunity yet. Plenty of time, better money than anyone else has had, pay-per-view share. He gave him the best deal yet. The best deal yet he got. And he moaning and complaining. How does that make sense? As a B-side. I mean, even look at Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather, who was a bigger name at the time than Caleb Plant, he played B-side to De La Hoya. Accepted it. Why? Floyd Mayweather said himself, the reason I accepted B-side against De La Hoya was because at that point in time, I wanted an opportunity to be an A-side. And obviously to beat De La Hoya and then to become the A-side. These days though, this new 2021 way of thinking about things, people think that you can fight no one, beat no one, do no numbers, and just be an A-side. Why? Oh, I'm with Al Heyman. I'm an A-side. Typical stuff. Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford. Caleb Plant. Do nothing. And just talk about how you're an A-side. No, I'm sorry. Errol Spence, your A-side fight is against Terence Crawford. Now, I know Terence Crawford doesn't do massive numbers, but none of you man have allowed him to, because you don't want to fight. That is the big number fight, if that makes sense. Spence versus Crawford, that is the big fight, relatively speaking. It's bigger than Porter. It's bigger than whoever else you got. But you don't want to do that fight. You're too busy talking. Same as Plant. All the points you listed out, yeah, none of them were bad points. In as much as none of the things that you've said in there made Alvarez look bad. None of them. You said he gave you pay-per-view points. You said he gave you $10 million. Billy Ho only earned 8. You're no bigger than Billy Ho. And you're getting pay-per-view on top. So, what are we doing here? And that's despite the fact that, where's your competitive drive? If you believed you could beat Alvarez, yeah, you would have jumped at that. Because you would have been thinking, wait there a minute. I beat Alvarez once. I get a rematch. Because the crazy thing is, yeah, people actually complain about a rematch clause. Well, if you beat him once, that just guarantees you a second fight. Does it not? It guarantees you a second record payday. And then you beat him again. And then you've got him in your pocket. To say to Alvarez, if you want a third fight, it's going to be 90-10 kind of thing. That's what you can do at that point. But come on, man. Look at all the fights Alvarez has done. And the way I look at these A-sides, yeah, these A-sides have spent years building, fighting the best. And that in my opinion, that gives them kind of a get-out-of-jail-free card. That gives them an extra respawn life. An extra respawn life is that rematch clause. A rematch clause gives you a bad fight, which when you're fighting the best again and again, I believe everyone deserves a bad fight clause, which is what we saw against AJ and Ruiz. When you're fighting the best consistently, it's inevitable, you know what I'm saying? When you fought 20 of the best fighters, it's inevitable one or two of those you're going to have a bad night on. And that's why a rematch clause is needed. Now, if you're doing what the PBC fighters do and fighting bums for 20 fights, then yeah, rematch clauses don't make sense. But when you're going in with the best again and again and again, champions, A-side champions like these guys, Alvarez, AJ, they've earned it. They need that kind of get out of jail free card. And guess what, Caleb Plant? If you're as good as you say you are, if you believe you got his number, just beat him twice. 2 fights. 2 fights, both are guaranteed to be your biggest payday. Because I'm not being funny here. Plant, he ain't got nowhere else to make 10 mil in one night's work. I'm not being funny. Again, complaining about the rematch clause, but that's 2 fights. That's essentially 6 months. If you beat Alvarez, yeah, if you fight him in September, by March, you're free and clear. So don't give me that about the rematch clause. Do you have his number or not? Can you beat him or not? Because if you can beat him, you beat him in September, you beat him in March. It's all over then. You're now the A side. You can do what you want. So you telling me You telling me you believe you can beat him, but you're still going to turn down $20 million in 6 months? Don't forget that. It's $20 million in 6 months. You fight in September, you fight in March. That's a 6 month period, and you've made $20 million. And you're free within 6 months to do as you please. Oops. The narrative doesn't make sense. And you can bet your bottom dollar, yeah, Caleb Plant in the next 6 months will fight one bum in that time and make probably 1 or 2 million, where he could have made 20 million and been the A side of boxing. And people forget that there's very few fights in this game you can have that make you a Hall of Famer overnight, which make you a bona fide A side overnight. Beating Canelo Alvarez twice makes you an A side, makes you a Hall of Famer overnight. So ultimately what this boils down to is this fight didn't happen because Plant didn't want it. Why? Plant doesn't believe he can beat Alvarez. In fact, Plant believes he probably gets knocked out by Alvarez, because even if Plant thought he could survive, he'd go in there like Danny Jacobs did. Danny Jacobs believed he could survive. He went in there and survived. Plant don't believe it. Plant knows he's going to get knocked out and or get whooped. So he'd rather duck the fight and then keep talking like a big hard ass. Because he hasn't, none of these things he's said have made any sense or given it any weight. He going out super sad right now. Now actually, before I go, I'm reading here from Mike Coppinger, who said the following. Plant closed his side of the deal weeks ago and was set to earn a career high guarantee of $10 million. In the end, Alvarez and PBC couldn't come to an agreement after both sides thought they had a deal last week. So essentially Mike Coppinger's saying allegedly that Caleb Plant had signed his part of the deal. However, how it works is kind of Alvarez and DAZN, they're on the level where Alvarez has a contract with DAZN that says I can fight who I pick. Plant doesn't have the same agreement with PBC. Yeah? So what happens is Alvarez, who is essentially a network now, he actually has to negotiate with PBC and Plant. So allegedly Plant signed his part of the contract. Where the deal went awry, allegedly, is that PBC and Alvarez couldn't agree on the pay-per-view terms. Plant isn't a pay-per-view split athlete. So the pay-per-view split, yeah, he may have got 5 or 10%, but this isn't a 60-40 case. This isn't a Pacquiao versus Mayweather kind of thing. This is a Plant has a set contract to earn 2-3 million. It's one of them ones. Plant would get 10 million and maybe 5% pay-per-view or something like that. They're alleging PBC and Alvarez couldn't agree on the particulars. Now, I disagree with that, because from PBC's point of view, no matter what the terms are, and let's not forget, Alvarez isn't unreasonable. We've seen a Triple G versus Alvarez fight happen loads of times on pay-per-view. Alvarez isn't unreasonable, I don't believe. He's not going to ask for things that aren't possible. Let's not forget again, PBC have put on pay-per-view shows with Deontay Wilder and Luis Ortiz. They've put on pay-per-view shows with Gervonta Tank Davis versus nobodies. So don't tell me it's about that. Alvarez versus Plant is the best part of what? 800k? Buys? Maybe more? But you're putting on Tank versus some randomer for 200k buys. Get out of here, man. Be serious. Get serious now. Which is why I'm led to believe this right here was an excuse. This was an excuse to cover Plant. They're saying, oh, it's the network. Oh, the network and Alvarez that couldn't agree. No, it was Plant didn't want to fight. How about that? The network will take. The network is just is just running a business. If it makes business sense, it works. Alvarez was never going to take more than it was going to make business sense. You understand what I'm trying to say here? As long as the pay-per-view makes profit, it makes sense to PBC, to Fox. That's not where the problem was here. Why would Fox turn down the... Listen, Fox don't have no other opportunities to work with Alvarez. So are you telling me Fox, PBC are turning down the opportunity to work with the biggest pay-per-view star in the sport at the moment? Get out of it and get serious. Plant didn't want to fight, and obviously, from PBC's point of view, they can't come out and say, well, we wanted to work with the biggest pay-per-view star, but our fighters shit themselves. They can't do that. So instead, they take the fall. Okay, yeah, we'll say that Plant signed his part, but it was us who couldn't come to terms. Get serious. Plant didn't want it. I've never heard of so much rubbish. Put it this way, yeah? How many times in history have we heard that two fighters wanted a fight here, but the network couldn't agree? You tell me it. Go on. How many times in history have you heard of two fighters wanting a fight, but the network saying no? Exactly. It's never happened. Never. Never have I heard two fighters say, yeah, well, we both wanted to fight, but the network wouldn't get... No. Plant don't want it. He's been exposed, no doubt.